What? And they're usually purple.
It is. And I didn't realize that until I started writing.
This is important, and trying to get them to understand that. I'm like,
hey, folks, we'll just give about 1 more minute just to let folks have a seat and trickle in.
Get your questions.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You only take written questions.
Something easy.
So, Joel, based on the size of the audience, we thought we'd just ask you have any questions.
That is funny.
Yeah. We're going to have 7 questions.
Yeah.
And it was obviously 8:15 on Nathan.
Yeah. Think about the parties last night.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
This is the.
No, I think we should ask how many people are not DISA.
Yeah, that's right. You should start with.
And then let's just come up here and have a little chat with the non-DISA.
Fireside.
What do you really?
Fireside chat.
Oh, you are cheating. I actually should have done. I didn't even think you put it on.
Well, only because I didn't have a printer access.
Y'all
See, I love pencils. I still can't stand pencils. I love pencils. I hate writing in pens. It's a pencil. With my white eraser,
I had.
People are like, "What are you doing with a pen? I need a pencil."
Yes,
I already had a printout, so I went with it. But yeah, I usually do the handwriting.
No, this is very not just kind of.
I find over the years that if I write out these,
It helps you know it.
No, I start reading.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop! No, stop! No, don't be read to. Yeah.
Well,
and
part of it, I did write more.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get kicked off here. Last day of the conference, early in the morning, so I see we've packed the house for this very exciting topic. So we have a suggestion up here for those of you who are not DISA, probably want to wave at us so we actually know we really are the ones talking to you. So,
all right.
The rest of our friends that we've brought in from the outside, we really don't want to hear from. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming to what I personally think is one of the most exciting topics here, DODIN operations. So, the way we're going to work this panel is I've got a group of distinguished, the best and brightest of DISA that are up here with me. I'll make a few opening remarks, introduce them, and then just set the stage a little bit. And then I've asked them to give you some comments from their foxhole perspective of how they execute the DODIN Ops mission within DISA. We've got a great panel here, starting from my left to your right with Colonel Paul Craft. He's been on a couple panels already. So he commands the DISA Global Operations Command. He's a West Point graduate. He served in a variety of command and staff positions, all the way, everything that a signal officer can do in the United States Army. Probably most notably, he commanded the 86th Signal Battalion in combat in RC South. I was at the 160th Signal Brigade when he was there in theater. So known far and wide in the Army signal community and most of the operational community, DOD, especially in the CENTCOM AOR. Colonel Joe Delaney is the commander of DISA PAC, a storied organization, a great Marine, located on scenic Ford Island. If you've not seen this guy's office, it is impressive, I will tell you that. I am in awe. He's a Savannah State grad. He served at all levels of the United States Marine Corps, from the lowest company platoon level all the way up through headquarters USMC. Welcome, Joe. Captain Miriam Smyth. Be careful, folks. She's actually a organic intelligence officer. She is a Holy Cross grad also. So, again, smart. Watch out. Unlike the rest of us cretins that are up here. But she's no stranger to cyber. She was the Deputy Intel for U.S. 10th Fleet, which is Fleet Cyber, those of you who are not aware, as Fleet Cyber stood up. So, again, no stranger to the cyber fight. And then last but definitely not least is Mr. Tony Purvis. He is or has the unenviable task of leading DISA's ecosystem as we moved it into one organization. I tell you, this guy has got a monster of a job, and he's doing it pretty well. I just told him this morning that I keep track of the DISA Command Center of a whole lot of information, but nowhere near the amount of information that he's got to keep tabs on at any one piece of the day. Tony is an Oklahoma City University graduate, as well as Oklahoma State graduate there, and he has served at all levels of that a federal civil servant can do, from an Air Force intern at the very beginning, Support and Office Secretary of Defense, all the way up to the GS-15 director level. So a great wealth of knowledge there in our cyber fight, as our boss, Mr. Bennett, has continually pressed upon. How do we integrate applications and end-to-end into transport for what had been DODIN ops in the early days? So just want to set the stage a little bit. There's some, we're not really going to use charts too often, but it helps just to baseline everybody. So got some stats up there for what is a typical day in the life of DISA in order to set the stage. Not going to read them to you, but the baseline, everybody, the generic definition of DODIN operations are the actions that one takes to build, secure, operate, maintain the network, right? Pretty simple. If you recall General Lynn's initial comments, the cyber domain is a little bit different, unlike all the other domains that are out there, air, space, land, sea. It's built, it's man-made, right? So one has to actually build it, operate it, and maintain it in order to operate within it. So significantly different than what DoD doctrinally had been used to. So in order to operate and do the cool stuff, you know, some of that sexy defensive cyber operations, or maybe the even uber offensive cyber operations, again, that domain has to be built and it has to be maintained. That's what we're talking about here today. The day-to-day, 24/7, 365-day-a-year fight to keep the network alive, to keep it moving, to keep it maintained, to keep it patched, to keep it relevant, to actually provide a capability to the department and the warfighters. The chart you see has some stats just describe the scope and scale of DISA's role in DODIN on any given day. In short, it is a massive, massive undertaking. I've worked in and around with DISA my entire Army signal career, but I hadn't ever really truly appreciated what goes on within the agency on the DODIN portion of DISA's mission as the agency there. The DODIN network, it changes every day. It lives, it breathes, it moves as locations come on, machines come on and off. So it's ever-changing, and it is, again, a monster to keep up with. From the furthest reaches of Afghanistan outpost to Air Force One, from telework to telemedicine, from the director's favorite DMUC or iPhone, Android, DISA provided the device in your pocket there, all the way through a deck tech or a combatant commander secure communications travel kit. DISA plays a key role. DISA's portion of the DODIN serves as the foundation and core depicted here on the diagram as the Department of Defense Information Network. So with that, we're going to move over to Colonel Craft to give you a little bit of his perspective on Global's mission and its role in DODIN operations.
Yep. I don't want to laze you. So as not to laze my brother Joel, I'll switch places here to explain what we're talking about. So you saw the number of events and alarms, 800 million DCO alarms, more than 200 million NetOps alarms. That goes into, from our perspective here, headquartered out of Scott Air Force Base, also ops centers in Columbus, Ohio, Pensacola, Florida. We have folks that are in Missouri, in Virginia, and in Maryland. So 16 total operation centers running the global network. When I talk about the global network, I'm talking about the Tier 0 boundary, Tier 1 boundary, before it gets down into the regions, before it gets providing services to the combatant commanders. You'll hear that about that, and also support and service for folks to get to all the ecosystem. So what that looks like, if I could real quick, is there are 10 doors that DISA Global Operations Command is responsible for. 6 in the United States, 2 in Europe, 2 in the Pacific. And that's the cloud access points for cloud services, Federated Gateway for our coalition services. That also connects that telemedicine, telework, mobility, all the mobility devices that have to get in and receive DoD services. All of our partners that are out there in the various mission partner environments that are provided, and clearly commercial cloud services. So those are those doors that we have to run, primarily out of Scott Air Force Base, that we operate, secure, and defend. Moving inside, you probably know DISA as running circuits or CCSDs. We talked about that. That's been the bread and butter of DISA for years. Obviously, there's a Network Operations Center dedicated to this, but there's also an Operations Center clearly dedicated to making sure that transport stays up, because that's been the core of our business for years. We also are the ones that are protecting the doors. So those folks that are flying planes and tanks and they're out there on the edge defending freedom. When they tie back into through a step or a teleport, we're the ones that are actually defending it before it gets to DODIN services, things you know like DSN, DRSN, SIPRNet, and NIPRNet. That's the part that we defend as it comes back through, I'll say, the side door. We provide services for the ecosystem, so we defend the ecosystem's doors to make sure that their services, so Tony services, are provided in all the ecosystem, formerly known as decks, that are out there. Application services, email security is a big part of what we do. We secure all the email systems that are out there, various capabilities that we have to include now auto blocking. We also handle web application infiltration, UC services. We make sure if your phone is in the wrong place, that your phone will get shut off if it shows up in a place where it shouldn't be or is doing something it shouldn't do. Those are the type of things that we do from a network operations perspective to make sure that it stays on. Domain name services, so we are the DoD's root for the DoD, so we're also root for, or G-root for 1/13 of the world, so that's our responsibility. The President gave that to the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Defense gave that to DISA, and DISA gave that to us, so we run G-root 1/13 of the Internet. DNS services are run out of the command, one of the 16 operations centers within DISA Global. We also run this thing called JRSS. So the JRSS Network Operations Center is another network operations center that sits in Illinois, and it is really two parts. So what it's known for is an amazing security appliance, 48 stacks in total, 23 on NIPR, 25 on SIPR, being built out right now. We have over 750,000 users of JRSS today. It is a great security apparatus, but it's also an amazing end-to-end network operations capability. Doesn't get touted as such, but you can see end-to-end if you have access to your JRSS system. If you're a combatant commander, service, agency, whatever the case is, data center, and you want to see from your endpoint all the way to what's going on the internet, you can now see that end-to-end, because that's what JRSS ties in also as a NetOps capability. Not well touted, but an amazing capability that we had not had before. And lastly, when we look at all this, all the number of alarms, all the number of events, all the numbers of incidents, trying to run a network of this size and scale globally to our combatant commands, regions, to SOCOM and the ecosystem, we've got to have a means to do that, and we do that via some big data analytics. So all those sensor feeds feed into a system, a big data platform known as Acropolis. So we not only have about 130 tools that we're using, vendor tools that we're using across the network to run the network, operate the network, defend the network, but we also have to have some indications and warnings of how things are going. And many times we're running analytics off of that, and we're doing that through Acropolis, the big data platform that DISA uses that all the customers have access to so they know what's going on. So this is we had the day in the life of what DISA is, and this is how DISA, from an enterprise perspective, runs those various layers from the very edge of the network down into where those regional field commands, combatant commands, and the ecosystem is. Thank you.
So we'll transition a little bit here to one of our regional field commands and bring it back a little bit now from that massive scale at the global enterprise to more of a regional perspective. Joe, please.
All right, thank you. Joel and Paul have already given you the big picture. I'm going to give you the regional field command perspective. So for those of you who are not familiar with DISA, because we took a poll at the beginning, I know we've had a lot of other people come in. DISA actually has three regional field commands. And I'm going to call an audible real quick here. I gave Colonel McClellan a heads up, but if I could just get you to raise your hand or stand up real quick. And Colonel Terranetti in the back, sneaking in a little bit late, but that's okay. Still good to have you here. Don't worry, I did give them the warning order that I was going to deviate a little bit. But those are my fellow commanders out in the regions. The way this is structured, you have a regional field command in PACOM, you have CENTCOM, and you have UCOM. And our primary purpose out there is to be the eyes and ears for General Lynn and all things DISA. And other primary purpose is to provide situational awareness and assured C2 to that combatant commander. And you'll hear me repeat that a little bit, but the advantage we have for DISA is we maintain a geographic focus. Everything we do is based on the region, and that's one of the things I really want to drive home. I apologize. I realized last night I was losing my voice. I'm double stacked here with the coffee and the water. I'll try to get through this. But as I walked around over the last couple of days, I had the advantage of being on the panel on the last day. And I got to interact with a lot of industry over the last 2 days and also see some of the other panels. And one of the things I realized back in PAC in the Pacific, we have a slogan we use on our command brief, and it says anticipating warfighter needs. And it really translates to what a lot of you all do every single day. A lot of the briefs we had, a lot of the discussions we had, that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm going to try to help you out with some of that anticipation as I go through some talking points. So I talked a little bit about how we're structured, but one of the things you have to know is in CENTCOM, they actually have a subordinate element out in Bahrain that helps them conduct their DODIN Ops mission. In PACOM, we're structured a little bit different, and of course in UCOM, they have LNOs at some of their key coalition partners. In PACOM, we actually have several subordinate elements. You can see them up on the slide. Alaska, mainland Japan, Guam, Korea, Okinawa, Japan, and also Hawaii. We have one that's located with the Hawaii, with the actual PACOM J6 and the JCC. And we also have the military EMSS, the Iridium Gateway, located on Oahu in Hawaii. And of course, my office, as Joe mentioned, is also located in beautiful Ford Island in Hawaii. So one of the things that I always emphasize when we have visitors or when we have interactions is, in addition to that SA mission, the situational awareness mission and the assured C2 mission, we try to ensure people understand the uniqueness of the combatant commander. While from the outside, every combatant commander kind of looks the same, every one of them comes with their own set of unique requirements. Every one of them has a unique AOR that they have to represent. And there's certain things that drive the thought process. Out in the Pacific, our AOR is naturally defined by the geography. It's very challenging when you operate in an area where you are constantly under the threat of a C2, D2, a command and control denied degraded environment, or where you're constantly under the threat of geographical isolation. So when we look at some of the technological solutions that much of industry provides, and even when we look at the solutions that DISA comes up with, we always think about it from a geographical isolation perspective. And that is something that I really want to drive home. So it really brings to bear the challenge we have with how do you provide that SA to the combatant commander when you have that risk of being in a denied environment or being isolated. We are in an environment where we have one combatant commander and we have two sub-unified commanders, USFJ, USFK, and we also have multiple 4-star and 3-star component commanders in the Pacific as well as the other AORs. The unfortunate thing is every one of them come to us with their own requirements, their own way of doing business. On the technical side, that usually translates to their own networks. Sometimes it's the service-provided networks. Sometimes it's completely different networks. Looking at Centrix alone, that some of you all are familiar with, that traverses all of our AORs out in the geographic region, and also that Tony Purvis and Paul Craft deal with a lot. We currently have 7 different flavors of Centrix. We have different flavors of SIPR. We have different flavors of NIPR. Even the end-user devices all the way down to mobility. We have countless different flavors outside of the enterprise solution that DISA offers. Those are some of the things that we struggle with. How do you provide a common operational picture of the DODIN when you have all these different networks, all these different solutions, all in the same AOR, and not all of them have that ideal geographic considerations when they are employed. Many of them rely on reach-back solutions. I can tell you that as we integrate with PACOM and we look at the requirements, and I know my peers do this with UCOM and CENTCOM, a lot of the solutions that we're often provided, they rely very heavily on reach-back. And when you're sitting with operational planners who obviously have a very different mindset, but they shouldn't, than the technical planners, that anything that requires reach-back is normally a non-starter. It really doesn't really buy you a seat at the table from a geographic perspective. DISA PAC is very unique in the sense that we are a subset of a lot of what you'll hear Tony and Paul talk about. We support about 1,700 tactical missions. I heard Paul mention that 2 of those IAPs are in our backyard, one at Hickam and one at Yokota. We see about 500 DCO IDM incidents a day. And most significant to us is probably the 40, what we call 40 TOTs, approximately 40 transoceanic trunks that run through the AOR. A lot of those actually traverse our AOR and actually hit my peers over in CENTCOM and EUCOM. And what's significant about that, a lot of them actually support our coalition partners and those coalition networks that you heard me mention earlier. The challenge we have with that is some of the way we do business now, it captures very well the importance of those links. And also we have about 2,700 circuits that run through the AOR as well. And we're able to capture very well the priority of those circuits. What we're not able to do effectively yet is capture what is actually going across those circuits. In 2017, the techniques and the procedures we're using to do that are still extremely outdated. So as you think through how you can help DISA, how you can help the regional field commands, I would ask that you really start by thinking about the unique geographical makeup of the AOR, about that unique priorities of that combatant commander. You often hear, I've been in and out the Pacific now. This is my 4th assignment to the Pacific. And one thing that hasn't changed is the requirement to be able to fight tonight. That's consistent. Anybody that's been in and out the Pacific, they know that slogan very well. Well, coming from my Marine Corps background, we have another slogan that goes that everyone trains to deploy, we deploy to train. When you're in the Pacific, you're already deployed. You're already in the AOR the moment you do something. So I love innovation, but I don't like innovation for the sake of innovation. We need your help. We need your help considering the operational environment when we're employing innovative solutions. We need evolutionary innovative solutions. In my ideal mindset, you will get to a better state and not have felt the pain to get there when you're an operator out in the field. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Smyth. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Happy to be here today. So I'll sort of take a little bit about what Joe said and then turn it on its head, because obviously I support the field office down for Special Operations Command in Tampa. So while he gets to have all the benefit, as he highlighted, of a regional focus, I do not. SOCOM is obviously deployed and focused globally on a whole range of missions. So in order to support all of that, in fact, SOCOM runs its own network embedded into the joint information environment, but they have their own SOF networks to support those forces from the tactical edge. So, you're talking a deployment of one guy or gal all the way up to the garrison. So where does DISA come in that mix? Obviously providing the critical transport that's behind that. And, when it comes to SOF operations, really can't emphasize enough how flexible, changing, mission dependent, all of those things. So anything we do to support that in terms of reliability is going to be critical. As well, really looking at the ability to provide the situational awareness of that transport, and it's, any little minor outage may sound really minor to, Paul's watch floor or somebody like that. Oh, it's just a couple seconds, that this circuit was out. For, a SOF operator deployed forward, those couple of seconds can be critical to mission success or failure. So really, my team is focused on ensuring we can provide, the real-time situational awareness and ensure we can, in some respects, translate the SOCOM need to the DISA enterprise across the spectrum from, what Tony's guys do in the ecosystem, and largely a lot of coordination with both Joel's watch team and Paul's to try and ensure we provide that situational awareness so we can maintain a global focus and support those SOF missions. And really, when you think about that SOCOM mission, it's going to range. You highlighted coalition. That partnership and being able to communicate with our coalition partners is critical. We don't do things, I think still, in the military we often talk about joint doctrine. in my mind, almost that doesn't exist anymore because it's really coalition. So how are we going to be able to operate with our coalition partners in almost any environment? How austere from, the middle of nowhere in, Africa or Afghanistan or those places, and then essentially have a seamless ability to move from the garrison out to that forward tactical edge with a single sign-on, and operate with that flexibility. A couple other points I'll just highlight. So I talk about the soft network. So obviously the SOCOM J6 and his subordinate C4 organization, which the SOCOM operates, obviously the headquarters in Tampa, but then they have a series of regional special operations commands out there in the theater. So I have, for example, SOCPAC nested out in Hawaii there, relying on the support of Colonel Delaney's team. So the goal for that network, as with any network, is to provide that worldwide distributed communication networks that's capable of supporting real-time command and control. And command and control is critical, and can't emphasize enough. Command and control, kind of anywhere, all the time, but also reliable command and control. So what I always am thinking, and I think my folks are as well, what's the plan B? Because something's going to happen. So when we talk about all of our architecture and our comms, making sure it truly is reliable and we have that redundant capability to support operations, and when that backhoe takes out the fiber, that we have a plan B, and what can we do, and rapidly respond to support that. Because there really is, little margin for error when it comes to what we're doing out there in the field on a daily basis. And just to give you an example of the scope of what SOCOM's doing on any given day, and I think this was last week, maybe a little over 1,200 deployed nodes that we're trying to support across the globe. So pretty massive enterprise we're supporting. And again, DISA is providing the critical transport for all of that, the backbone, really. A couple other things I just want to highlight. I talked a little bit about redundancy, and also talk about the reliability of information, i.e., is it trusted, and can we continue to rely on it? And that goes to a little bit what Colonel Delaney talked about in an expected contested environment. How can we build our architecture? And that's where partnership with industry is critical to ensure we have the right architecture, the right comms, and then the right systems and applications to ensure the veracity of our information at any given time to support operations. And one area I'll just highlight a little bit would be airborne ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. As an intel person, obviously close to me, on the receiving end of that data. So you're talking, how do we build, and maintain an architecture that can support airborne ISR operating globally with a volume of data that is sort of, grows by the day. That requirement, continues to grow. How can you get that massive amount of data from a forward area to everyone that needs it? And that's going to be from the guy on the ground all the way back to somebody up in DC that's going to do some analysis on that information, and then have to feed it back real time to operational commanders and folks on the ground to execute an operation. Other big interest areas, and I think in many ways we're in a unique position in my office and coordinating with SOCOM to work a little bit on innovation in because of how we operate and where we are, being able to test out some new capabilities and then work with DISA to partner and figure out how we can make those things an enterprise solution. For anybody that's been here, we've heard a lot about the gray network. SOCOM's been doing that. They're doing it now, and trying to work in partnership with DISA then to execute that on a broader scale. So that's one area of innovation we've been able to work through and partner together. Big other areas of interest, I highlighted coalition operations, but cross-domain solutions. That's going to be critical for us to how do we get, those volumes of information to the people that need it at all levels of classification and as rapid as a means as we can. And when I say all levels of classification, also, in a way that our coalition partners can use. How can we take advantage of the cloud? Those are a few ideas. And we're always looking for opportunities to innovate and move forward to deliver a better product. And then probably lastly, as I look and talk about innovation, one of the big things we're constantly looking at, and we want to partner with industry, but we also want to look for solutions that aren't proprietary and vendor specific, because we have to go with something that's going to support, the entire enterprise and can't be limited to one specific vendor or one particular area there where it works. So that's another area I just would throw out there as a means of focus. with that, I think I will stop actually early and cede the remainder of my time to the gentleman on my left. Tony?
Thank you. So I'm Tony Purvis. I'm the chief of the computing ecosystem. For those of you that were here last year, the ecosystem was a glimmer in someone's eye at that time. So in the past year, we've developed a process. We've developed a new organization. We actually set up officially in the January timeframe. So we've been at this about 6 months. From a computing standpoint, if you've ever heard, and Joel mentioned earlier, the former DEC structure, so the old defense computing centers, all those fall into the computing ecosystem now. You see on the chart, we've got 9 physical data center locations within the ecosystem, actually 2 locations in Europe, 1 in Bahrain, and then the other 7 CONUS. So all those data centers and all the computing power, the data infrastructure, the comm infrastructure within those data centers all fall under the ecosystem. We are organized into 8 lines of business. So when you think of the ecosystem, we are a 100% working capital fund organization. So from a computing standpoint, we develop rate structures. It's a business. So when we say we've got 8 lines of business, that's really what they are, is they're lines of business. They have both the strategic focus of where we're going over the next 3 to 5 years, from a contracting standpoint, from a technology standpoint, as well as the day-to-day operations of the tactical side to ensure that the applications that are hosted within those data centers and within that line of business, that they're 7x24, they're up continuously. We're continually monitoring those applications from an event standpoint. So if something does go awry, if some patch doesn't get deployed correctly, how do we back out of that patch quickly? Within my data center line of business, I've got a command and control cell. That's really what I call the heartbeat of the ecosystem from an operations standpoint. They interface well with both Colonel Craft's operations watch floor, as well with Colonel Lindeman's the defense the command center up at Fort Meade. So there's a continual back and forth of, is it the application side, is it the network side, and even on the application side, is it a server patch that went awry, is it a storage array, is it some local comm device within the data center? So from an application standpoint, we're quickly finding out that we thought that the old data center in Oklahoma City functioned the exact same way as a data center that ran in Ogden, and we're finding out within the first 6 months that there were some nuances, that some system admins did something a little bit differently on one site versus another site, and that's what the challenges of each of these 8 lines of business is, to figure out how they optimize, get efficient, and understand how we standardize those entire environments. To give you a little bit of scope within the data center, or the data centers, we like to think of ourselves as we've been doing cloud computing for years. I mean, we're really the cloud offering for DoD. So within these environments, we've got approximately 15,000 server environments. We still do mainframe processing. A lot of our DLA, Navy workload, DFAS workloads still operate on the IBM mainframe. The Air Force and DFAS still operate on a Unisys mainframe. So those applications, they keep running. From a mainframe standpoint, I've never operated a mainframe, but if anything could go more on the mainframe, please, because those things never go down. They're really good. They're patched well. They're very secure. Mainframes are our life. That's how DISA sort of got created back in '94 from a computing standpoint, is we brought in the mainframe environments. We consolidated them. So mainframes are good. We need to continue operating them. There's IBM and Unisys continue to support them. So there's mainframes in about 3 of our data centers. We operate about 50 petabytes of storage. We operate almost every one of DISA's enterprise services. Colonel Lindeman mentioned a little bit earlier, enterprise email. Enterprise email is hosted in our data centers. About 1.7 million NIPR users, about 200,000 SIPR users on enterprise email. We operate the mobility infrastructure. So any mobile device within either the unclassified side, the SIPR classified, or even up to the TS classified is operated within our data centers and managed out of our data centers. So we're very versed in all the enterprise services. Joe mentioned coalition services. We operate the coalition services for our different mission partners. We've mentioned a lot about the AISR mission. We operate the UVDS application out of one of our data centers. So we're very much in tune with the deployed DoD warfighter. We're very much in tune with the CONUS people that use our enterprise services. So we're very global. From a standpoint of, I know earlier we talked about MilCloud and the new genesis of MilCloud. Today we operate MilCloud 1.0 infrastructure, so that's managed out of both our Oklahoma City and Montgomery data centers. MilCloud 2.0 is going to be an on-prem vendor-provided offering, but it's going to be within our data center walls. So we're still in tune with cloud offerings, even as we move from a government-provided cloud offering to a vendor-provided cloud offering. From a day-to-day ops standpoint, I mentioned a little bit about event management. That's our livelihood. You know, I hate to get a phone call from a mission partner saying an application's down or they can't get to something, because I feel that we failed, that we didn't do event monitoring in the right way. So that's what we need help with from industry, is we need to definitely increase our ability to event monitor almost everything going on in the data centers. We do a good job today of, if a system is actually down, great. What we don't do a good job of is making sure that, does that end user have the ability to get to that application? The system may be up, there may be something else wrong in the environment, from the operating system to the application to the database, all the way to the network side. But we really need to do a lot better job of that end-to-end monitoring. So that's where we really need help. Yesterday, I had an entire panel talking about ecosystem. I'll try not to rehash a lot of that, but from an industry standpoint, we do have our capacity services contracts. There are several of those that are on the street right now in an RFP phase. Can't go into details on those right now, but we spend about $200 million a year on hardware services, whether that be the processor, the communication, or the storage environments within the data center. So we're very in tune with industry. As you guys innovate, as you come up with technology currency, as you come up with new ways to doing business, we're always looking for those environments and how we maintain and operationalize and become more efficient. Also, one last plug, I talked a little bit about event management and a little about my command and control cell. We are very much an IDLE organization. We follow IDLE almost to the tune of using incident management to problem management. We really need to do a lot better job with our configuration management and change management. I can't tell you, as we move it into the ecosystem, different decks or data centers handle change management and announcements of service interruptions differently. That's something we definitely need to work on in the next 6 months, is how we get that process more nailed down in dealing with both the DCC and global in that entire service interruption management from the network all the way down to the application side. So with that, I will cede everything back to Joel.
So we have some time left for questions, and I would just sum it up by saying this is obviously Joel Lindeman's opinion as a straight Army signal officer. You've heard everything out on the defensive side. The cyber folks will talk about the offensive side, especially on the defensive side. Realistically, it doesn't take an adversary, whomever it may be, from the hacktivists all the way up through nation state, to work all that hard because of the existence of vulnerabilities, patch management, release management, everything we've just talked about. So, I believe a great Marine general once said that, amateurs are the ones talking tactics, experts are talking logistics. To me, amateurs are the ones out there talking OCO and DCO sexy stuff at this time. The real experts are talking DOD operations, because it is the foundational core of everything we do in cyber. So with that, we'd love to hear your questions. If not, be careful, we may ask some of the audience ourselves. All right. Yeah, come on.
Okay. Captain Smyth, a question. I'm working with some people with endpoint encryption, even works down to cell phone level, where you can get rid of networks in an instant or create networks in an instant, that kind of thing, and they're using some technology out of another agency. Would that be something we'd come and talk to you about providing, or would we go through the people, the services catalog, or what's the port of entry for that?
So I think, go ahead.
I was going to say probably if you want it, specific to SOCOM,
correct.
Then I would go through, SOF AT&L down at the SOCOM folks, and I can get you the right points of contact down there. But they would be the ones that would.
That would be their.
Cool. It would be in
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Joe Marinich with Citscape. For Colonel Delaney, for your questions or your points about being able to be efficient in the theater in an area of operations, and with with regard to the question, the points you were making, Ms. Purvis, about the efficiency of the Ops Center, I would like to have some discussion of how you merge those two objectives of being efficient at the center and then supporting Colonel Delaney's needs. Can you both speak to that in terms of what opportunities there are for products from industry to help you be more efficient and also to have more efficient utilization?
So I'll start. So from a efficiency standpoint, so within our environment, there's about 1,400 civilians, about 1,000 contractors within the ecosystem today. So about 2,400 people. Labor is probably our largest overall bill within the computing environment. So what we're looking for and having industry help us is how do we automate a lot of these day-to-day tasks that it takes to run an application, a database, or a server or mainframe environment. I think that we've got, Bob Torres, my server line of business chief, mentioned yesterday that there's some culture differences within the server group system admins. You know, people think that automation may be bad because they may be automating themselves out of a job. I don't view it that way. Our environment continues to grow. We've got to find ways to automate these day-to-day tasks. So from a patch management standpoint, I was talking to a vendor yesterday. One of the simple things in my way of thinking is you've got 4 big tasks. How do we take a patch, deploy it to a server, back that server up, whether it be virtual or physical, create some checkpoint in that environment, apply a patch, check to see if that patch updated correctly. If it did, then you're going your merry way. If not, it rolls back to the backup that you just took an hour before, and then it sends an email, a notification, some alert to say this patch didn't work correctly, the environment didn't come back up correctly, some check in that environment. But then we've got to automate those tasks. Because right now what I do is I've got system admins coming in around the clock, applying patches, doing different things, and I've got to get out of that. I've got to get into more of a day-to-day ops where they're not looking at patches, they're looking at the DODIN operations, they're looking at the environment, and not just patch monkeys. And that's what I feel like I've got today, are people that are just patching. And how do I get out of that mode of patching? So that's where I'm looking for tools of this automation of the patching environment.
Yeah, I was going to, I concur with Tony. Of course, he is the expert in this area. I was just going to give one very simplistic example of how you support what I was talking about along the lines of what Tony's doing, using enterprise email as an example. Enterprise email is hosted out of OKC, Oklahoma City, but there's an instance of DEE, the enterprise email pods, mini pods in the AOR. We have a couple different instances. We have other services that use that same model. If we are faced with that geographic isolation, we are not totally cut off on whatever geographic landmass that may be at that time, whether it's Hawaii or Oahu or Korea or one of the other landmasses. And we try to keep that mindset with everything we're doing. If we're in Okinawa supporting the Air Force and the Marines, predominant services in Okinawa or Guam or Alaska or whatever customer we may be supporting, we look at all the capabilities and we look at which ones are most critical to how they operate, to what that commander needs on the ground, and then we engineer unique solutions to support them. Still keeping in mind the overall lines of business and making sure we don't break that and break the model that we're going to.
Colonel, on that unique solutions that fit that local need, are you able to do that without having the connection back to the main operations center? Are you able to do some things like basically off the main network?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes with DEE, but the primary is still back in the ecosystem in OKC. But those mini pods are actually designed to operate independently as well.
Okay.
That's one of the things as we look at places like, I'll use Korea, it's been in the news a lot. If we look at Korea as an example, we have to be able to operate certain things if we were ever isolated. I look at the same thing with Hawaii. A lot of, as we stood up the ecosystem, a lot of things have been centralized, but there's still instances of it that exist on Oahu in Hawaii.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for your service. I'm Charlie Tupizza with the National Forum for Public and Private Collaboration, and we took the good work of the people that created the Department of Defense Enterprise Service Management Framework, the DESMIF, and we took that document, we replaced the word DOD with organization, and we replaced the word warfighter with customer. We call that document the Foundation for Public and Private Collaboration. So we're using that document now, and we have NIST involved with what we're doing. We have the telecommunication industries and a number of other sectors on the commercial side participating in conversations about, you use the magic word ITIL, what we would say service management. That document calls out a lexicon, so that provides us with that lexicon. And there's nothing unique in that document that is for the DoD. Anything that unique we took out. So that document now can be used in conversations with the private and public sector. So my question to you is, how do you think we can best engage other parts of the Defense Department in our conversation and the private sector in our conversation? Because what happens in this case, everything that we learn, because we are really the DESMIT, with those few words changed, everything that we learn there can be taken back into the Defense Department, and anything learned about the DESMIT from the Defense Department can be taken back out into the private sector. So I'm really curious if you think that that's valuable, and if there's anything that we can do to help beyond this.
So from a computing standpoint, yes, I think it's valuable. I think that any time that we talk to our vendor partners, that's the way I view the industry is as our partnership. Using that same terminology is always a value. I think that I was talking to Miriam earlier today that what we do need to do, though, is as we try to take the applications that we host and that true technical terms, how do we recraft that wording to where the base end user that may not be that high-end techie understands what we're doing. Exactly. And that's the struggle that I think a lot of my people have, is they can explain it at a extremely ultimate technical level, but then when you're talking to a general officer or to an application person, you really need to take it down several notches to say, what's the so what? Really, don't talk about patching, don't talk about Windows version, blah, 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 or some IEEE standard or some level 7 layer thing. Talk about what's the impact to the end user. And that's what our struggle. So I think that's where we still need help in our environment, is figuring out how we, I won't say dummy it down, but take the technical ease out of things. And I think we all talk ITIL, we talk DESMIT, we talk things which are great internal to the walls that we have, but as you get it back out, how do you take that IT terminology out of it and talk about end user support?
And I don't use the word ITIL, but to that end, one of the things, what I liked about the DESMIT is that it's mission focused. It's about the customer. Yeah. So now what we're doing is we're bringing the cyber stuff to that. We have Ron Ross at NIST and other people at NIST and other security people, traditional security people, looking at this and how can we align, how can we bring this security stuff to that? So align that. So, and again, back to what you were just saying, this language of how can we talk about this? So we're really talking about supporting the mission. Cybersecurity happens to be something that enables that. Right. So that's kind of how we're approaching what we're doing. So
good point.
I'm Rick Hyde from Mantech. Recent RFI that came out for GSMO talked about a vision of integrating compute and the ecosystem into the DoDin more directly, GSMO. Could you kind of define the end state or vision that you might have for that concept? Give us a little more color on that.
Yeah, so I actually entered that yesterday during my ecosystem session because I got a similar question. So I mentioned we've got approximately 1,000 FTE contractors within the ecosystem. So Mr. Bennett, the chief of the Center of Operations, said, hey, we've got about 80 contracts today covering those 1,000 FTEs. We know we need to get to less. It was really more location-based. That's how we've grown up over the years, is location-based contracts. So he had the idea, what do we think about GSMO? So the RFI was released with a lot of DEC terminology in there. I think they chose about 3 of our contracts to put in there. And they said, hey, what's the interest? Of course, there's going to be interest. The struggle is that GSMO today is more comm-focused. So what we're doing today is, I've got a meeting next week in Oklahoma City. There's some people that work for our logistics groups that's coming in. I'm educating them on the computing side of the house to see if GSMO does fit. We released the RFI, so we're really not sure if we're going to go GSMO or if we're going to go just contract consolidation within the ecosystem. So we've got 2 paths that we're looking at. So those 1,000 FTEs spread across 8 lines of business, we're looking at creating 2 or 3 contracts per line of business. So the mainframe line of business, there's about 100 contractors in that environment having 2 or 3 contracts for mainframe, having 2 or 3 contracts for server, having 2 or 3 contracts for our comm line of business. That's one path that we're looking at. We're also looking at GSMO, task order-based contract. So if we go down that path, then we would have a task order for our comm line of business and possibly a task order for our cyber line of business. So those are the 2 lines of business that we're looking at now, possibly staying with GSMO. But after next week, I'll have a lot more information on, is that the way we're going? Right now, the schedule is, we're talking about if we do contract consolidation on by LOB, it's going to be in the March 19 timeframe is when those contracts will be released. So we've got about a year to figure out how we line these 1,000 FTEs, 80 contracts into something, either GSMO 2 or LOB type contracts.
Thanks very much.
So if I could just follow up. So the challenge that we've had is we grew up, I'll say we grew up separately, but we're brothers from the same parents. So you've got about the same amount of folks that are running, it's on my slide, the entirety of the infrastructure. So think of it from an OSI model perspective is DISA Global runs whatever 1 through 6, and then I pass with about the same amount of folks that Tony has to run the application layer 7. You know what I'm saying? So our challenges are ASI management, outages, change management, incident management, the whole ITIL framework that we just talked about how we can work together, because Tony and I are on the phone together all the time trying to figure out, you know, so-and-so's email is down. Is it an IP change? Was it a countermeasure change? Was it a transport change? Was it a backhoe? Was it a network change? Was it an application change? So we've got to fire through. Our organization fires through 6 layers of the OSI model and then says, nope, we're good, and then passes over while Tony's doing the exact same thing, checking with the ecosystem and what's going on. The goal is, with all things, is unity and integration. So we end up putting, I'll say, Tony and Global in together into a singular organization that can handle the entirety of the DoD's IT mission.
And I would foot stomp the entirety of the mission, right? It has to scale. There's some tools out there for customers for their level of service at their endpoint, right? But that usually is targeted at the enclave level to see what they're seeing. To scale that to the enterprise, the DISA portion that we're talking about is, I've not seen it to date, right? So while we all talked the framework within ITIL, be able to have those tools that scale to have that true end-to-end from whether it be POTUS, a general officer, to private snuffy at an installation having a problem with an enterprise service, to be able to point to where that specific problem is in that entire architecture is a tough problem. So, yes, if you've got help for that, we would definitely be interested.
Good morning, John West from Verizon. And the question I have is a follow-on to discussion on coalition partners and gray networks. Just wanted to know, what are some of your challenges with working with coalition partners, and how can industry help with those challenges from an operational perspective?
I'll just start on that a little. I think probably, again, SOCOM a little unique. So a couple different things. There are several things that DISA is doing to provide some ability to have real time for whatever, whether it's humanitarian disaster or crisis response, whatever it is, to have an ability to quickly stand up a virtual, enclave to support that. And while I think for many of the theaters that will work, for SOCOM, and you're thinking globally, a lot of our partnerships are more enduring. So how do we have the ability to, set up that enclave and then rapidly change it? And because that's really what happens is, our coalitions, they're not static. We have some that are, been our partners for, hundreds of years, the long enduring partnerships. But then we have a lot of other ones, right now in the counter-violent extremism efforts, those partnerships change by the day. So how do we have, the appropriate technology to scale that and rapidly change, and then just the ability to, I would just call it clunky, and that's the history major, but, guards for emails and simple things like that, they're clunky. You get one little slash wrong, a comma versus this or whatever, and it blows up. So how can we do that better? I think those are some simple ones I would just throw out there, and that's at the very basic level.
And then from a hosting standpoint, I keep talking about efficiencies. How do we get more efficient? Because we are in competition with industry when it comes to hosting services and hosting applications. And in the coalition area, for every different coalition force you have, we've got an isolated network that we've got to manage on that. How can we merge those together? Because right now it takes this person working this one, they turn and work on this computer, they turn and work on this computer. How can we find a way to virtually isolate, from an encryption standpoint, all that to where it's fewer desktops, fewer servers, fewer things, fewer devices? How do we consolidate those devices down to manage them more efficiently? That's what we need help with.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, John, is that sometimes it's hard to get ahead of the customer. So you have various coalition partners, various commands, and I mentioned it earlier, they all bring their own solution to the table. I mean, out in PACOM alone, we have multiple instances of the same Centrix. So Centrix J, Centrix K located in different areas. We have MNIS, which is more of a DISA solution, but we have multiple instances, and the customer has demands, so they're not waiting on the enterprise solutions. And that's probably one of our biggest challenges, is coming up with that. We kind of know what it is, what it should be, but we're not there yet as far as having that one solution across all security domains.
Hello, Jim Stribling with General Dynamics. The topic is cloud computing, so ongoing conversations both at the DISA level and the department level around cloud computing, not necessarily the on-prem mill cloud type cloud computing, but even level 5, level 6 commercial data center cloud computing. So from a DoDin ops perspective, interested in your thoughts on maintaining visibility and awareness of data when we're talking about a cloud computing environment.
So I'll start, and then the network people can talk the network side. But that's what so I'm not sure if you listened to John Hale's briefing yesterday morning, I think, where he talked a lot about cloud services. We are going down the path of Secure Cloud Computing Architecture, SCCA, and the Cloud Access Point, the CAPT. So as we build those environments out at the first 2 locations, that's going to give us at least the ability to see what's going on in the true vendor cloud environment. But that's my big concern, is as applications, because today if an application goes down, I've got responsibility to up-channel it to where someone in DoD leadership is aware of it. As truly a vendor's or a customer's application goes truly into the commercial cloud, who's responsible for that NetOps reporting of the application? We may be able to monitor the connections and ensure the connections are secure getting into it, but the NetOps, the DoDin reporting of those applications. Great question. As people write these contracts going to commercial cloud, are they figuring in and calculating how to do that reporting piece of application awareness? I don't know. Great question.
And we just talked about how we are today and where we want to go is because we want to be ultra responsive to the customers more than what we are right now, and have that total end-to-end visibility and be able to fight through the entire OSI model in an instant. That's where we're bringing the computing center and the infrastructure together, along with the defense, is all one thing. And so it's a rapid cycle. The challenge with doing cloud computing, and that's the thing that we DISA, we DoD are working through now, is how do we get that same level of speed that we're generating now by how we're optimizing, so to have that same level of speed with our industry partners.
And you heard the gentleman from Dell EMC yesterday talk about, well, there's only certain things that I care about, definitely more so than others, right? So that public-facing website may be some embarrassment, but really has no operational capability or serious pain to the department. Yeah, we haven't had those discussions well enough to say, well, that's something perfect for the complete off-prem cloud that can be hosted out there. It's cheap, it's reliable, and not a big deal. In terms of my life yet for reporting to the seniors, I don't have that stratification done yet so that we know what is that not important thing. We over-report in a lot, in my opinion, for the customer's sake, because we always want to give the best service we can. A lot of those conversations have to happen and to figure out what we can best use that cloud instance for.
And the expectation is perfection, right? We're all IT folks. The expectation is perfection. Anything less than perfection is unacceptable. So I can be equally, I'll say, yelled at for not providing pristine HD video using a governmental system as I can for getting yelled at about someone who's doing a Skype session through the internet access point to who knows where in some foreign country that my 30 frames per I'm not getting 60 frames per second, I'm getting like 15, you're fired. So, we're totally held responsible for everything, so we have to make sure that we're giving our customers, the warfighters, their expectation of service. So it doesn't matter where it is, as long as we're partnering with industry and everyone understands the severity of the mission, the speed at which we're expecting it to be fixed, and the customers that are involved. So it doesn't matter, because we can't discern many times on what's important, because when we get the call from senior leaders, it's all important, right? It's all important. It doesn't really matter the application, because at that instance, that's what's important to the warfighter, and that's what we have to respond to. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Greer from Greer Forensics. So first of all, thank you for the presentation. I found it fascinating. I wanted to know if DISA ever collaborates with new research and development of new technologies or has capabilities to pilot and transition. And the reason I asked, what intrigued me is you talked about the difficulty if you, let's say, emails down and you don't know, is that an IP address, is that the application level, is that maybe perhaps due to DNS somewhere. So, for instance, DHS, I don't know if you're familiar with the Paradigm program, which they're rolling out. That's a program designed to solve exactly that, and they're lining up a lot of advanced R&D. And I guess I'm interested, as an organization which tries to be involved in R&D solving these new problems, how would we go about collaborating with this, transitioning, piloting, solving problems like you expressed there aren't solutions available for you?
So I'm definitely probably not the panel that you have before you, but our mission partner engagement team is probably, and Mr. Rivera's organization is definitely the ones to begin the conversation with. And go ahead.
So again, I would definitely point you to the BD side, the left side.
Okay.
But many times vendors come into us because we're test driving it, kind of quarterbacking, running the infrastructure. And I'll say our number one challenge from a network ops perspective is obviously we've got a lot of different vendors out there, a lot of different enclaves that are in place, but we're looking for integration and partnering between those vendors and using a capability that we're calling event orchestration. So there could be a higher level outage that causes circuits to go down, therefore that causes routers to go down, therefore that causes servers to go down, therefore it causes clients to go down. But on our scope at 800 million events, we'll get 100,000 events in that one instance because of one problem that then blows up across an entire enterprise. Okay, so we're looking for that event orchestration capability across multiple vendors, across multiple layers, IP layer, transport layer, session layer of what's going on. So we can say, absolutely, it is this thing that's going on, and that kind of nulls out all the other flashy red lights that are going on throughout the entire enterprise. So that's where I'll say from a DISA Global perspective is we're looking for that integration, that event orchestration to let us know exactly what that higher level outage is that's causing all the other outages, because we'll respond to top to bottom all those solutions. We like or problems, incidents, and we want to know what that base problem is. So that's what our challenge is. That's what we're looking for from industry today from a net ops perspective. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we've reached our time. It was a great conversation. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.